version of the intro I gave before. Arthas is my most played hero. If I go in here, you can see he has almost a 200 game lead on Johanna. If I put in the versus AI, ooh, it gets even closer because I've had more AI games as Arthas apparently. But over 1,000 games as Arthas, I have ridden Arthas to a 58% overall win rate in that 1,038 games. Even this season, I've played a fair amount of Arthas, but he's tougher right now. I think that he definitely has his moments where he can shine, but will it let me try the different skins? Nice. I'll totally try the skin that I use more often. But Arthas is extremely powerful in his narrow role. Arthas has the most soft crowd control, I suppose that's a good way to say it, of anybody in the game, because his E has a 1-second cooldown, and it becomes the most punishing aspect. Okay, get rid of this stuff, get rid of all the minions. Okay, so much like before, we're going to go through a couple of different builds. I have 3 builds that I have loaded here to go over. So the first one is Arthas's job as a control tank. And so you take Frost Presence. While they did buff Howling Blast back in August to have a higher range, so it used to be 8, now it's 9. The reward used to be 30%, which took you from 8 to 10.4. The reward is now 20%, which takes you from 9 to 10.8 range. So overall, the baseline is stronger and the quest completion is stronger. But the main thing on this quest that is more impactful than people give it credit for is the third reward. The third reward makes it so that he routes enemies along his path. So we're going to take that and complete quest really quick. So we can see here I am at this targeting dummy. I'm going to shoot past this one and both of them get rooted. While that's not a huge looking thing right there, it has fantastic synergy later on, especially as we get to Shattered Armor. So now they all get less than 15 armor. If we're here and we hit all of them, 15 armor is not the biggest armor reduction in the game. The biggest armor reduction is 25. The 25 exists on Imperius, it exists on Brightwing. I'm trying to think of anybody else that has negative 25. Varians is 20, Urel's is 20. But the thing is, on an 8-second cooldown and being able to hit an entire group, potentially, especially as a follow-up CC, can be extremely impactful. And so having the Frost Presence reduction and the Shattered Armor work extremely well together. So again, this is Arthas in his control tank mode. The idea of having your E last a second and a half after you're out. Oh, I didn't mean to aggro those guys. Leave me alone. And you can see going that from 1.5 seconds now to 3 seconds that it lingers is a bigger deal than people give him credit for as well, and is particularly punishing to heroes that require that movement speed or attack speed. Arthas is the only one that gets both of those baseline. May does have a level 13 that I don't necessarily recommend, that does allow with Polar Vortex to have that lowered attack speed, but it's not as easy to keep up, and it competes with cooling servos, which is a problem for it. But right here, with this build that reduces the mana cost with Frozen Waste. Oh, I was going to look at the time, but I didn't start a timer. But I'm not using any other abilities. I'm just channeling this. And you can see at level 20, I will never run out of mana channeling this. And so Arthas becomes the king of crowd control in that moment, just being able to keep people stuck. You can see here, because of the Remorseless Winter talent at 13, every 10 seconds, so long as I keep these guys in this for 3 seconds, they will freeze and get rooted again. If you're ever playing on my team, you'll hear me start to say free roots, free roots, free roots, and then boom, they will get rooted. Come on, machine, root already. Boom. I usually will follow that up. And so again, this is a very control tank oriented, up to the point that we're taking Syndragosa. Syndragosa's range is quite extreme. You can see we even hit the fountain there as we did it. And it's a 20-second, oh, wrong button. It's a 20-second disable that goes out. We'll hit the fort. And a little bit past. Now, some stuff that you could change, and one of the builds is going to show this, but at level 20, I like Death's Advance because it removes one of Arthas' main weaknesses, which is he doesn't have an engage to get to people all the time. Yes, he has Syndragosa, it's on a 100-second cooldown, but now moving 10% faster than everybody, excepting Lucio when he's on a wall, or when he's speed boosted, or Lunara's trait, he now can catch up to quite a few people. And because he can eventually get to walking 40% faster, or with this up to 60% faster, nobody gets away from him. Period, end of story. So again, his ability to have extremely low cooldowns is a big deal. And so that is my control tank. It's going to require that you have a good relationship with your healer, because you're not taking a lot of your survivability talents at 4, at 1, at 10. All of the 7s are survivability talents. Icebound Fortitude has the most bang for its buck. Being able to shrug off stuns, roots, and slows. A 1-second stun being a quarter of a second stun means that you're just done, you're out. And even a 2-second stun, you're out in half a second. Most of the time, that's not going to be enough opportunity for the enemies to destroy you. And you get 25 armor in the process. So, sorry, I needed to take a drink there. So being able to control in that moment can be a big deal. You'll see as I'm walking here, the little white gray lines shooting behind Arthas, showing that I have movement speed, much like the purple lines swirling around people when I slow them. Most people aren't going to pay attention to that, but that does mean, if you see I click here, you can't see it perfectly because of my overlay, but I'm at 111%. Why it goes to 111 and not 110, I couldn't actually tell you, as the tooltip does read 10%. But this one you're going to want to use again in a coordinated setting with a healer, and when you've got someone that you just need to be able to stay on top of. It works extremely well against characters like Jaina and Alex. It works extremely well against tanks such as Blaze, Johanna. Arthas, despite people not necessarily paying attention to him a lot, is a Johanna counter, because once her shield wears off, your Frozen Tempest applies and she can no longer get out. Most Johanna players aren't going to pay attention to that. Arthas is going to work really well on maps where the enemy team is going to come into you. Volskaya, Shrines, even something like a Cursed Hollow. Arthas is going to do really well because everybody's coming to a point. And so similar to the Garrosh discussion earlier, when Garrosh is in the bush like this, it's kind of his natural habitat. Arthas can similarly abuse vision on the map, come out on somebody and get a hold of them, and once Arthas grabs somebody with Frozen Tempest, they have a lot of trouble getting away. And so that's the big deal with Arthas. Yes, he's fallen out of the meta, but right now a very popular tank in the meta is one that Arthas counters. and that is Diablo. Auto attack Diablo into Arthas doesn't get his big healing. Dives in, and Arthas doesn't really take the stun. And if he flips Arthas, Arthas is still on top of him. Here, we'll do select enemy hero, Diablo. Now, the AI in try mode is particularly stupid. But here comes our good friend Diablo. He is a charge build, with overpowering nightmare. That surprises me. But again, it's the bot. Complete quests. Oh, I wanted to complete his quests. Come on, Dibbles. But in that scenario, you can, so long as you're mindful of your positioning and you're not just taking a bunch of free damage, which is Arthas' weakness as a wall tank. He literally has to walk up. Until you get Syndergosa online, you don't have a way to get to people. This is a skill shot. It's not an easy skill shot. I don't know why we haven't had Diablo show up yet. But we'll try that. Maybe that'll bring him out. But an auto attack Diablo really struggles into him. There we go. And as soon as I get a hold of Diablo, all of Diablo's abilities keep Arthas close. His wallbang, Diablo comes with. His flip, Arthas is right there, type of thing. I think I said Diablo comes with. But once you get a hold of somebody, you want to maneuver to where you are on the far side of them. Diablo, you want to stay more side by side with him so that he doesn't shove you back. But if you can get a hold of someone and you stay just side by side with Diablo, he can't shove you back into his team, and you just slow him to where you can see how bad his movement speed and his attack speed are right now. And even when I leave, he's 70% slowed, and it lasted for 3 seconds. So that's your control tank. Melee assassins are kind of who you would love to go against in this scenario. Kerrigan, yes, if she gets a hold of Arthas in a burst scenario, can be a little tricky, but being able to shut down her ability to get her shields with Arthas and keep her from approaching your backline anymore is a big deal. Butcher really struggles into Arthas. Illidan also struggles into Arthas, which is good because that's what the lore says it should be. And you're a little more difficult when you get to, say, Zeratul, because he'll just blink away. But even if we had our good friend Illidan here, if Illidan tries to blink away and you've got this level 7 talent...
You mean Zeratul or Illidan?
Illidan, because he's got sweeping strikes that he can get away. He's then slowed in that moment, so we saw him dive there. Come on. And blind does not affect, or evasion does not affect spells. Come on. So he does that to get away, and he's still mega slow. Now, yeah, I'm on the level 20 upgrade, but an Illidan can't do anything to stop an Arthas. Now, it is a bit of a shift with your teammates because you've got to get them to come to you. But if you can get your teammates to stand with you, you can reduce the enemy damage. Arthas is going to struggle against people who are just outside of his attack or his Frozen Tempest range. So one person that I particularly hate is Tracer. A Tracer player, because this is my radius and she gets to attack just from outside it, we have trouble because of how constantly mobile she is, ever getting a hold of her. So really, if it was any good Tracer player, she'd be dancing right at the edge there. Okay, so we've talked about the control tank. We're going to turn stuff off. We're going to reset talents. We're going to move into the next one. This is your most durable version of Arthas. So Rhyme at 1, still Frozen Waste, still Icebound Tempest, but now we're going to pick up Army of the Dead. Same thing there, and we can go either Anti-Magic Shell or even Legion of Northrend. Legion of Northrend, excuse me, does give you more ghouls, they last longer, and they heal for more. But in this build, you now have the ability to, in essence, walk up to somebody like a Rainer, and they will have trouble. Yeah, the bots are stupid. They will have trouble being able to burst you down because of your Rhyme block charges. Against somebody with mage damage, being able to become spell immune and heal for that is a big deal. I had a Malthael earlier going against me, and he said, "How were you able to dodge my last rites?" And I said, "Because of my level 20. Dang it. Enemy hero. Go away, Tracer. And so because of that, you're just a far more durable version of the control tank. You do lose, of course, at level 1, the route through enemies, but the hallmarks are you stay alive, and you're going to have a Remorseless Winter that you can then follow up with your Shattering Throw. A variation that you could do on this, especially if you're against melee heroes, which in a draft environment, you really don't want to draft Arthas until there's 3 melee heroes on the enemy team. But if you're up against someone, for example, a Samuro, you could, at level 13, go for Biting Cold, which just rips apart his clone images, his mirror images, which is part of his ability to escape. And so that puts him in a far more vulnerable spot than trying to root him for reduced armor. There are builds where you can go into Rune Tap and Icy Talons. They're super neat talents, though I do think Rune Tap is a little bit behind the curve, considering a Full Souls Diablo heals for 4% every attack, and Arthas gets 5% every 3 attacks. But an Icy Talons Arthas is one of the fastest attack speeds in the game, and it's hilarious how durable he can become in that moment. But he's still pretty susceptible in that because, one, people will just walk away. This doesn't really last that long, and then people are smart enough to just stun him or blind him, at which point basically all of his healing goes away. But this is probably an easier build to start with than the first one. Perhaps I should have changed that order before, because of how durable you become. But this is an Undying Arthas build. Again, at 20, you can go with any of them. Anti-Magic Shell if you've got something like a Last Rites or a Cursed Bullet that you need to deal with. Legion of Northrend if you need more sustain. And Death's Advance if you just need to be able to close that distance a little bit better. Finally, the third one that I would go through, and Melkor, I know this is going to be one that is particularly important to you, being as you play the offlane a lot. So an offlane Arthas, you go into an Immortal Coil build, or a Death Coil build, and you can go either green or Frostmourne Feeds. I like Frostmourne Feeds myself, and you, again, can go with any of them here. So here, and it would have hit the fort too. So, and it roots, which is another nice perk. But the idea of this one is you're trading in lane constantly. You've taken what was a 9-second cooldown and turned it into a 6-second cooldown. And anytime your enemy hero comes out, you are just trading with them. And so, for example, Arthas, who you're a pure counter to Arthas anyway. Arthas hates slows and attack speed slows. But what you don't want to do is have a Protector of Ire Arthas coming out and just stacking on you. Toggle the minions to get him to come out. Come out, Arthas. But you can root him, keep him at bay and just hit him with that. I suppose I should shut off cooldowns. I hate the bots sometimes. But it works very well with a ranged opponent in the off lane, in that now you can trade with them because it adds the additional distance, it reduces the cooldown, and because there's no mana when you hit them, you just will be able to spam that. I wonder if I messed something up on this before. Let me see here, because I worry that I did.
Choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
Alright, my cooldowns are off, and you can see my mana is still taking forever to go down. I believe I screwed that up before. But it will take so long to run out of mana with that E-Quest.
Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
Alright, back to 3.
Choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
Alright, things have kind of quieted down.
Okay, we're going to come over here and take a bunch of damage. I suppose I should just go to the towers. Alright, so this is Embrace Death that we're showing right here. Oh, I won too many shots. Alright, if anybody's unaware, sometimes Valk's stupid. And also, if you ever look at this and wonder what all the bars are, each small section is 250 health, and then each dark bar gives you 1,000. Okay, so here I am. I'm at about 10% health, and it was a 1368 heal at level 20. $1387. So I personally, while it's neat, I don't like it as much as just taking the extra Frostmourne Hungers attack. I do wish they would change this to, instead of 2 empowered attacks, it was 2 charges. Yes, that would mean you'd get a little more carpal tunnel in trying to do it, but you'd have more control over it, because I hate when I have the 2 charges and I end up
Choose a talent.
like this. And I killed whatever I was hitting, or my team cleared the wave, and now I'm just like, oh, okay. And I don't, it doesn't click down on the timer. Now it goes into the 8-second timer, where if it was just 2 charges on an 8-second cooldown per charge, or if the charges both refilled at 8 seconds, I think that would be better. But Arthas's talents do have a little bit of dust on them at this point. But now that we've gone through Valk's 3 basic builds and some ideas about Arthas, what questions do you have?
So you said you want to do that Arthas specifically into range?
No, I do this one in the solo lane a lot.
Or no, like when you pick Arthas solo lane. I mean,
So if I'm picking Arthas in the solo lane, no, I'm not only doing range. But
okay.
if I'm going against someone like a Phoenix in the solo lane, I can trade with him all day long with Death Coil. I just bring the wave over to about right here so that he can't really come up any closer, and I clear the wave using my Frozen Tempest, and I just hit him with the Death Coil, because at level 4, if I hit him with the Death Coil, there's no mana cost on the Death Coil. And at 7, if I hit him with the Death Coil, I still get healed. I actually preferred the old talent of this, the old Immortal Coil. You actually received bonus healing when you hit an enemy hero. And so it always healed you, but if you hit a minion or a mercenary, you got 100% healing. If you hit an enemy hero, you got 200% healing. And if you self-healed, you got 100% healing. And so it incentivized you to just hit enemy heroes with it, because you also got the extra healing. The current version is more of a choice, and that's great. I just liked the old version of the level 7. So
Mm-hmm. And then what about matchups you wouldn't want to have him in the offlane?
he's not particularly good at double soaking. Sorry, I
Oh,
just saw your message. I
no.
thought you would whisper me in game, not in Discord,
Oh,
so I wasn't even watching there.
no worries. Yeah, right when I typed that out, you're like, all right, we're going on to the offlane, Arthas.
Yeah, I really like offlane Arthas when it's a map like Hanamura Temple, for example. You hit level 10 as offlane Arthas, and your team is not necessarily needing you to double soak. It's not a particularly large match
Mm-hmm.
or map, but at level 10, you can take your team, you take whatever sentinel is yours, and you go to the other side and go boom, and you rip their keep, because the Hanamura keep is exposed. I mean, you can take the fort too, that's fine, but there's just a certain amount of mind games to taking their keep early if you can. And that's a 20-second disable. The damage isn't that great, but the disable's fantastic. And so you just rip their wall. And
Right.
because of the design of the payload in Hanamura, they're often going to come to you. Because of the design of the sentinel camps, like you're going to be fighting there, whether you're getting to theirs before them or what have you. There's a lot of opportunity for Arthas on a map like Hanamura or like Haunted Mines, which my offlane Arthas won Haunted Mines today, so take that, Stoic, who is muted.
Your Arthas did win on Haunted Mines. I don't think it was your Arthas that won Haunted Mines.
Oh no, but he did win.
Arthas did have a dub today.
So, but yeah, I think that on maps where a global would be better, I don't know that Arthas is your man. Take ETC in the off lane, take Dahaka in the off lane, take Malthael with On a Pale Horse. But
Mm-hmm.
on a map like Hanamura, Arthas in the off lane is just fine. And on a map like Battlefield of Eternity, I got no issue with you running Arthas in the off lane, because at level 10, if you have taken the objective and you have Syndergosa to go with it, that is a huge push. Like everyone's like, oh, take Sylvanas. Yeah, that's great. But the whole enemy team's slowed, the structures are down for 20 seconds, you don't have to keep reapplying it, you just go nuts. And let's face it, the enemy offlaner is probably going to take someone like Imperius or like Artanis anyway, so pub stomp those fools with Arthas. What other questions do you have, Melkor?
The first one I ever saw him in as offlane is in Braxis against the guy that can do the telekinesis pull.
Alarak?
Yeah. That's when I first shot the showcase of his offlane.
Yeah, and in that case, I think having the range here on Deathlord is just fine. You just keep throwing that at him. Alarak, his only really healing ability is if he goes into, I believe it's Q quest at 1, and if, or not quest, but Q at 1, and so he Qs someone and he gets an attack speed buff and heals for 50% of the basic attacks he does. Well, if you're just at range peppering him and can anticipate his telekinesis, you'll be just fine. And what Alarak doesn't have is wave clear. And so you just clear the wave, and then you can, if he's low sadism, you really can just absorb everything anyway. And
What?
then he'll use sadism to get away instead.
Is there a specific combo for the wave
No.
from him, or is it just?
So you don't want to use Howling Blast on the wave. Just don't. So the wave comes out as Arthas. You're going to stand in the center of the wave, and you're going to melee the back minions, and you're going to rotate who you're killing so that your Frozen Tempest helps you as much as possible.
Alright, sounds good.
So, but because of the low cost of Frozen Tempest, like, you don't even care. You just walk into the middle of the wave.
What's the last one you have? Your level 20.
Death's Advance in this case. Really, you can take any of the 20s. Absolute Zero, we saw that when...
Choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
Somehow I anticipated that.
So I'm all the way at this, which is not necessarily normal, but...
Tomorrow. Tonight.
And it flew... Oh, I missed it, but it would have hit the fort, as you can see by it hitting the
Yeah,
fountain.
because they're in line. They're not at a curve, most of them.
Now, some stuff to know on Arthas is read your tooltips. So it makes Arthas's next basic attack strike immediately. So you don't want to run up to something and power it and then hit it. You instead want to come up, hit it, and hit it again. So that way you get as much burst out of it as possible. Especially when you're in any build using Rune Tap, that's important. The synergy with Frostmourne Feeds is kind of a big deal, because you get your natural first hit and then boom, boom, you just got 5% of your health. And so you're trying to time it for that so that you can get as many of those 5% health procs as possible.
And that's what I was going to ask, was with the rune tap. So thanks for coming back.
You want to try it one of them?
Yeah, Rune Tap, I said this before you got here. I think Rune Tap is kind of a dusty old talent. It's nice, but if we looked at Life Leech from Diablo attacks 3 times and gets 12% of his life. Arthas attacks 3 times and gets 5%.
Yeah, I've never really gone to Death Coil talents, so that's good to know.
Yeah, here, let's see, give me an ally hero, or enemy hero. We'll even do my hated old Phoenix. There should be a reset quest too, and not just a reset talents. Come on out, Phoenix.
So I really do love Arthas. I think he's super viable, like you said, like on BOE and other maps.
So here, he just starts to trade with you. You just keep your distance. Now, most Phoenix players are about as dumb as this bot, and will just walk up to you. And I would have killed the Phoenix there before he would have killed me if he sits on me like that, which is bad news for Phoenix.
For sure. Yeah, Rune Tap definitely kind of requires like your person you're offlaning against to just kind of sit there and let you whack on them.
Yeah, Rune Tap and Icy Talons are one of the things that you can absolutely use against a Arthas using Protector of Ire, because all they want to do is sit there and attack you. Well, eventually, your auto attacks are at 60%. Oh, I started that one low.
Take your revenge, hero.
Your auto attacks are 60% faster, and their auto attacks are 40% slower. And Arthas are dumb.
For sure.
Mainly Protoss are dumb, but
They'll just self-root themselves for some reason.
Yeah. But it's tough because I want Arthas main tank to be more and more of a thing. It's definitely becoming more difficult in the current meta. So your meta tanks, to step out of this really quick, I wish that it would let me pull up a tier list in game for me to make through my favorites or something, but it doesn't exactly let you do that. But so coming back to my collection of your meta tanks right now. So give me the tanks. We'll just pretend this is variant here. But in my opinion, Diablo is seen as extremely meta right now, one of the top tanks out there. So there's going to be a lot of people, depending on who you talk to, are gonna say your S tier tanks are gonna be Diablo etc. Your A tier tanks are gonna be Garrosh and Johanna and May. Your B tier tanks are gonna be Muradin, Anubarak, and Tyrael. Your C tier tanks are going to be Mal'Ganis, Blaze, Stitches, Arthas, and Cho.
I agree with that. Because like a lot of those tanks that are like B tier like have their spots, but like the other tanks just work well in any composition really.
Yeah, and I actually think that the tank meta is extremely healthy right now. Like I
Sure.
love that I don't look at any of these and just be like, man, they're not very viable. A lot of people hate on Stitches, but Stitches is one healthy dude. And the ability to have the threat of hook, I'm telling you, Lobber doesn't hate on Stitches. He does just fine. Someone gets out of position, he slams them.
Do you know who JPL is? Or
Yeah.
he didn't have a problem with Stitches. So.
Yeah. So, yes, Stitches does feel a little one-dimensional, but he has a lot of threat. So,
Sure.
of the meta tanks we mentioned, I believe that Arthas is a strong counter to both Diablo and Johanna, because a Diablo charges in, and so long as you don't get on the enemy side of him, but you stay side to side with him, you keep him slowed, and he doesn't get to do as much. If you get
Sure.
on the enemy side of him, he's going to eventually have his diabolical charge back up, and he's going to shove you into their team. For a Johanna is going to be like, oh, I hate walking into Arthas and getting slowed. Well, then she's going to expend her shield to be unstoppable, which means she can't get past you, because if she goes past you, her shield will expire, and she'll never get home again. So Arthas can be a counter to Johanna. For Garrosh is one of your worst nightmares, because he has enough crowd control that he can lock you up long enough to kill you. With Arthas into Garrosh, you must take Icebound Fortitude. If you don't take Icebound Fortitude into Garrosh, you will not survive the process of walking out of the trap you've set yourself in. Arthas does really well against Muradin, because Muradin players are just like, it doesn't matter, at the end of the day, I got Avatar, I'll be just fine. And so they jump in, and then they can't get out, ever. And you can watch a Muradin player, and you'll eventually get to this point with watching Muradin. You'll see them start to approach a barrier to hop over it, or you'll see them start to turn, and you know they're about to jump. Muradin's jump is no longer unstoppable. It hasn't been for years. And so you can catch him right as he's about to jump, and now he stays there. His jump goes on cooldown, you will kill him. ETC is a difficult one for Arthas, because the same reason that he's difficult for Garrosh. You can't get in very well around his mic check, or not mic check, that's not the name of it, I almost said loudspeakers. Yeah, his knockback. Face melt is his knockback. And so because your only engage is either your heroic with Syndragosa, or throwing out a skill shot, which is difficult, or finally walking up, ETC has multiple tools to stop you. Arthas does pretty well into Anubarak. A lot of that is because of Icebound Fortitude. If an Anubarak is foolish enough to dive you, you see it coming, you hit Icebound Fortitude, you're instantly unstunned, his Impale doesn't stop you either, and now he can't dive back out unless he has Rewind at 20. Arthas doesn't do particularly well into Stitches, because Stitches kind of wants to be there anyway. If everyone's hitting Stitches, that means that Stitches' backline is surviving. He does well into auto attack based Stitches, which is out there, but not a lot of people play it. Most people will go into a fishing hook style where they only care about getting the big picks, man. That's what I do. I'm Stitches. But the problem is Stitches gets a talent at level 20 that effectively makes him immune to Arthas, which is super frustrating. But you can go into a build with Arthas where, because Stitches wants to be up there and he doesn't have any ways to really stop you from auto attacking, you can go into something like Icy Talons against Stitches, and eventually you're hitting so fast and healing so much with Icy Talons and Rune Tap that all of his Devour bites to heal him don't matter. Arthas does fine into Tyrael. Oops, I didn't actually mean to click into there. But much like a Genji, Tyrael can get away, but it means that Tyrael can't get in and kill your team. Blaze is fine, but the stun, you basically, if he puts his oil under you, you have no way to get out of the stun, so you just have to use Icebound Fortitude to stop the stun. I hate this part for lore reasons, but in this case, Mal'Ganis kind of dumps on Arthas, which shouldn't be the case.
Got it right. What the heck?
Yeah.
Just de-shield yourself and kill him, Arthas.
Yeah. If I could make an adjustment to Arthas, if I could do just one thing for Blizzard's kit right now on Arthas, it would be if you hit someone with Howling Blast and then hit them with Frostmourne Hungers, you would silence them for 1.5 seconds or something, which would give you the ability. Oh, I'm going the wrong way here. Which would give you the ability. Oh yeah, I was in roster, wasn't I? It'd give you the ability to stop his ult. It would give you the ability to stop a lot of things. But of everyone on this list, Johanna has interrupts, Garrosh, Muradin, ETC, Anubarak, Stitches has Gorge and Hook, Tyrael has Judgment. I would give Tyrael an interrupt some way too. Interrupt, 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 interrupt. You tell me why it's fair that Arthas, one of the original tanks in the game, does not have a single way to interrupt a channeled ability. It's not, dang it. And so put it in a weird combo, much like Virulent Reaction for Stukov, where you hit them with a root, then you hit them with Frostmourne Hungers, and they're silenced. That would be the first thing I would change. The other thing that I would greedily change would be I would add Icebound Fortitude or Death's Advance somewhere earlier in the kit, or some way to earn it through baseline, kind of like Muradin's Stun Quest. But even if we add in other tanks, Uther has the ability to interrupt stuff. Variant's Taunt interrupts stuff. Even if we go with some of the wilder tanks, oh, wrong kit. Maiev has the ability to interrupt stuff, and Valera has the ability to interrupt stuff. Imperius has the ability to interrupt stuff. Deathwing too. So even Misha main tank, they all got ways to interrupt stuff, and Arthas is just the king of soft crowd control. But if the enemy team drafts 3 heroes that are melee, it's a good Arthas game. If they draft 4 heroes that are melee, you're going to feel like a god. If it's a 5 melee opponent team, you pick Arthas and it's a free game. Like, that's just how the world works. Apparently there's customs ready to go, but are there any other questions for playing Arthas before we wrap up here.
No, I think that's pretty much covered.
Yeah, try out that solo
Yeah.
lane build with Eternal Hunger, Q Quest.
Was the first build the tank build, by the way? It was, right?
Yeah, the first and second build were both tank builds.
Okay.
The first one was designed to be a high control, but survive or lose some survivability. The second one is designed to be very high survivability. And then the third one that I shared was an off lane build. You really
Okay.
don't want to use it much with tanking just because now you don't have your access to.
The CC you need for team fights, even though he doesn't have that interrupt, but
Yeah, well, and you also lose Icebound Fortitude, which is a major piece of
Yeah.
tanking. Yeah, I don't love talents like Indomitable and Icebound Fortitude because if you look at their pick rates, they're enormously high. And to me, that says that there's a part of the kit that's missing if 80% of people say they have to pick Indomitable on Garrosh.
should
It's-
be baseline then.
Yeah, there should be some way to earn it. That's exactly what they did. If you go to Muradin, okay, so Muradin's quest right here, Stormbolt, the ability to pierce, and I'm pointing at my screen as if you guys can see
Yeah.
me, but the ability to pierce used to be a level 4 talent for Muradin. It was just called Piercing Bolt or something like that. That's all it was.
Same with
Yeah.
Medivh too. It used to be his Q used to not. It used to be a talent that stacked it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This should
And
do the
so
same thing.
if it's that critical, but you don't want it to come online at level 1, put it behind a paywall of quests. So that's one thing that I wish they would update. I mean, I was surprised they didn't give Arthas 50 permanent armor and immunity to percentage-based damage in this patch, but you know, I don't get to make those decisions.
Yeah. I think a silence would have been a little overpowered, but I do think he needs something. Something to make him a little more viable.
DEFCON,
my
I just
stance
saw
on
your
that.
message in chat. I will look that up and get it to you. So, alright, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream and probably play some custom games. Later, everybody.